Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Today is Friday, October 21st. Starting a little late today. Um, do I even have a really great excuse for starting late today? No. I suppose for the accountability section was working on making a QR code in Lego form, and uh, that works if you get the big message board that with the Lego dots, but you gotta have at least two of them, I would say. And it wouldn't hurt to, frankly, have a few extra pieces too. Also, to get it to work, I had to use different colors for the anchor marks in the QR code. So there's a square, there's, well, a couple squares that are make concentric rings in the top left, top right, and bottom left. And then there is a smaller square with a hole in the middle of it in the kind of bottom right, but not quite in the bottom right. So by switching all of those squares into a different color and then using that different color to put a frame around the QR code, which just makes it easier to scan, that left me enough pieces to do the actual individual dots slash squares of the internal code of the QR code, which of course I didn't hand generate or anything. I just had one already ready to print. I guess we're going to be able to generate some new cards, which is nice. But yeah, you're going to need two sets, and so I was able to make two QR codes that are two different. Well, they're the same QR codes, but they're different colors palettes. And using different colors, you are going to have two colors that are hopefully closely aligned to each other and definitely bright and in the brightness scale versus the background, which is a dark blue. So for me, I used a hot pink and yellow dots, and that's one of the problems with the Lego message board too, is they don't really guarantee you any specific number of dots, so it can be very random just from box to box, or at least a little random from box to box. Additional missions have been unlocked for Link Frag. Okay, so we need to jump into that. But yeah, so I used white and lavender on one, and then I used hot pink and yellow for the other, and then the blue background of the base plates worked for the background of the dark parts, the black in a black and white QR code. So you have two colors that are being the white of the white parts of a QR code and two black. And then the Lego dots left me a lot of, because of the big message board really only giving you quarter pizza slice, quarter circle pieces and square 1x1 pieces in Lego. I was able to do what I would describe as a floret, where I just took one quarter circle and had the flat part facing down, and then the next quarter circle having a flat part facing up, and then the other two flat parts meeting in the middle, and then I would swap between the colors, and that made a nice little pattern, because for some reason, even though the QR code is square, it didn't actually come out square on the board. So I added this little pattern to fill out the difference, which means the QR code is like 1 pixel shifted down and to the right. I also have just an empty row, an empty square again of nothing around it after a light border around it. And that works. I will say noticeably there is a certain element of the scanner that seems to now just be built into Android, because the Samsung Galaxy camera app is just not sticking towards actually scanning QR codes. It used to do it, but now it will try and scan things as text if it will try to do anything. So you have to go to the Wi-Fi settings, and then in the top right of the Wi-Fi settings in Android, it seems they will they will bring up a different camera app that will scan it. But noticeably on that, you have to be fairly far away from the QR code, like an unrealistic distance away from the QR code for it to catch, and you have to be somewhat steady. It doesn't have the feeling of really having stabilization in it as well as you would like. But yeah, it works, and I was very concerned in the process of doing this. This was about a 2-day project, really probably closer to one and a quarter day, 1.5 day project. But my concern certainly was that when I originally started trying to do it all in white pieces, did find enough white pieces to do the first one, but really wouldn't have had enough yellow pieces to do the second one, because there's just an inconsistency on how many pieces I got. And so then I tried to make it so it was more curved and use some of the curved quarter pizza slice pieces, and that got me back a few pieces, but not really enough. And then there was just a constant risk, because you can't test the QR code until it's almost completely done. Like, it is a version 1 QR code, which is the smallest, with the lowest amount of redundancy, which theoretically means if you lost 5% of the data, it still should work, but you just really cannot do anything until you have at least anchor markers scanned in. It won't be recognized at all by any app. I actually find that a barcode scanner app I have on my cell phone was much faster at recognizing a barcode scanner, the barcodes, than the Wi-Fi barcode scanner. And if you were going to manually do this, you'd have to look up the exact words and formatting you have to do to turn a regular QR code into something that they would recognize as a Wi-Fi connection address. It is just text, but there's a specific formatting to it that they're looking for. So yeah, throughout the entire process, I started off being afraid I was going to run out of pieces, and that being really the case, that I did run out of pieces. Then being afraid that curved pieces wouldn't read, and then finding out that that would work, and then being afraid that I was going to run out of yellow pieces on the second one, and then that really happening, and then running out so much with the yellow pieces on the second QR code I was making, that I at that point had to just start to change to a secondary color, and being afraid if a secondary color would work or not. Noticeably, one thing I did learn about this, I really need to stop using all these nervous tick words, like noticeably. They mean nothing, and I'm just throwing them out there instead of saying which I guess is better, but not by much. The anchor pieces really do need to be all the same color. So this small circle kind of in the lower right corner, that like that would not scan when it was a different color from the other anchor pieces in the other corners. So that is interesting. It actually came out very nice looking for a QR code. And I don't think you could have a third color in the palette. You probably could try something like, but I think if you were to try to alternate colors around the anchor points and make a pattern that way, there's a high chance that wouldn't scan. And I think if you were to start to change the actual data dots in the middle of a QR code, a lot of that I don't think would scan either. There is an interesting thought about whether you could reverse engineer a QR code so that it would have all dots or no dots, but I'm fairly certain the way the algorithm works, there's no way to have anything like that actually read anything or scan anything, and it would be almost certainly gibberish anyways. There is definitely, I think, some part of the algorithm in that creates that inverts the information. So yeah, almost certainly couldn't do full dots. And so that was a nice little distraction when really I don't need a distraction. I haven't gotten back to Sexy Brutale, and by the time I get back to Sexy Brutale, I'm gonna have forgotten everything and very possibly make like one episode and then the whole thing's gonna be wrapped up. Or I'll have forgotten everything and I'll have to relearn everything I've been learning while playing Sexy Brutale, because there is kind of this, you needed to memorize the movements of everybody in the game, and or it feels like that's going to be the case. But it is, I think, going to set me up in a weird situation where that doesn't actually happen. So it's probably a mistake to play this right now. Let's go ahead and summon this. See, this says if a card is special summoned. But that wasn't special summoned. So I'm confused. Well, I am confused to say the least as far as how all this is supposed to be working for his strategy of doing a massive amount of damage to me, but I think the solution is fairly obvious, to just attack this and destroy it. Otherwise, for the accountability section, yeah, I didn't really do anything. I've played a ridiculous amount of Marvel Snap, and I watched a lot of TV and don't even remember what I'm watching, which highlights that I shouldn't be watching TV really, or streaming services, because I mean that is fairly crazy to know you've spent a decent amount of time watching streaming services and TV and not really have anything to show for it. I watched that movie Stay Tuned, which was a really old 80s movie where parents get sucked into a TV run by the devil. So it's evil parodies of 80s TV shows, which is interesting because then you have this aspect which only a certain number of shows can be made fun of, and most of those shows are going to be hard to even remember or recognize. Unmarried with Children is like one of the joke concepts that they put at the end credits, which is a change certainly from the early 80s, as far as an evil version of Married with Children would just be that he was unmarried and had children, whereas nowadays most people aren't going to be ostracized that much at all by having children out of wedlock. Right, let's cancel this effect. I hope that helps. Stay Tuned is not really a good movie. It's just kind of one of those old B movies, mediocre type movies. Good enough to have on the background if you have nothing better to do, but I definitely had better things to do. Yeah, more and more I imagine in the fall I'm just not gonna accomplish too much. Like, that's where I'm at. I definitely am feeling the squeeze now as far as the bills come in from that second Amazon Prime early access sale. Enough that I'm gonna have to be fairly cautious on any future sales. But also, the stuff I was buying was to fix my irrigation system, which I need to start working on that project now. And that's all I really did buy, other than a couple Lego and a couple other things. But generally, I think things are just getting more expensive. And so every single purchase is just like $1 more here, $1 more there, groceries and things like that. And I'm sure a lot of people are feeling that. And there's no real solution that I know of to any of that. Oh yeah, so I played a lot more Marvel Snap. I don't know why I'm playing Marvel Snap other than it's installed and it's giving me notifications to push me to Marvel Snap. But I found a way in the collection menu to see all the cards that you could possibly get. And honestly, after playing it fairly heavily for a couple days, I'm probably past a 50% point in which I could have all the cards that exist in the game. There is one concept extra that I wasn't aware of around destroying cards. So, but that seems to be the only other concept in the game. There was a location I saw that said if you have the least amount of power in this location, you win. I was assuming that meant at the end of the game you would win the whole game. Instead, it just means you win that specific location. And it's a kind of great example of just them not really caring to polish their phrasing and their words. So you have ongoing cards, you have cards that activate on reveal, and then you have cards that can be destroyed and sometimes will activate when they're being destroyed. But there aren't enough cards really, I think, in the entire game to have a destroyed deck. And then there are also cards that will show up at specific turns, and so they're guaranteed summons on a specific turn or summons. And since there are only 6 turns in a game, guaranteed turns, could create potentially a deck where you get the exact same cards every single time, and you play the exact same cards every single time, and only the locations might slightly change the outcome. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same boring thing over and over again. And that's not exclusive to on specific turns you get specific cards decks. That's going to be the experience for all of them. I was able to use all the secondary currency, the kind of free currency. I used all of that up, upgrading cards. It does seem like the more you play a card, the higher the chances that you'll get the number of duplicate cards, which is basically, I think, what you're getting, even though it's not actually depicted that way, to then level up the cards. When you go from the live to the third tier of leveling up a card, you get a shiny logo, which is just a visual effect on the logo. What the tier above legendary is, because I think there's at least one, if not 2 tiers above that, I have no idea. But it's definitely a letdown, to say the least, to have that kind of shiny logo nonsense be an upgrade. And so once you run out of the free secondary currency in Marvel Snap, well, at that point I used the premium gold currency to buy more secondary currency, and then I quickly ran out of that also. I don't know what else you could have done with the gold currency, because you can't buy the season pass with the gold currency, and while you get a little bit of free gold currency by logging in every day or so, it seems, that's all you can do. Like, so the game just seems really, really dumb. It seems way too simplistic. It seems very weird that it has a gambling aspect to it. The gambling stuff still heavily wants you just to always snap to as much as possible, to double it and double it to 8. When you can actually double things, I don't know. Because it seems like most of the times you can't double things. But you can definitely at the very beginning of the game. But then it seems like there might be a kind of weird imbalance where you can't snap a second time if both players snap at the very beginning of the game. So, but very rarely do you actually retreat. Very rarely do you do anything other than to push forward, because you just don't know, since it's not a turn-based game, what the end outcome is. I'm still winning like crazy. I hate to complain about having a very high win ratio, because I'd love to see more games have high win ratios. It does seem to give a win to both players if you tie, which is nice. Which probably also highlights that there's really a broken rank system in the game, and no real competition in the game. I did look up Marvel Snap videos, which my video still basically has no videos. Also, YouTube still hasn't let me claim a handle, so that's probably going to be weeks, if not months, from now that I'll be at the bottom of the list. I looked up some other Marvel Snap videos, and I haven't really been watching people like Trump, Trump in this case, I mean the Asian card game Hearthstone. He used to play Hearthstone a lot, streamer. But yeah, the bigger names, celebrities, amongst that, they apparently had early access. So my video wasn't even out early. And yeah, they definitely weren't generating a lot of buzz, because I didn't see any of their videos. As someone who's not subscribed to their channels. But the second or third video I did see in Searching Marvel Snap basically had somebody already raging around it and saying they weren't going to play it. And I'm saying exactly the same thing, so that's not a huge surprise. I took off the Two Woods Diverged in the Path trailer video I had on my YouTube channel. That video, I put some audio effects on that I think made me sound even more lispy than I was even at the time. I do think I've improved somewhat. Like, listening to that video from a couple of years ago and listening to my recording just from Wednesday, yeah, I just don't feel like I'm that lispy anymore. Or maybe that's just I have a better chair, better microphone settings, or it may just have been I was putting a bunch of audio effects on it and that really didn't work. Plus, that video doesn't look great, and it didn't really do anything for my channel. It got overall about 500 videos, which is to say that's probably about as many people who have ever gone to a YouTuber's channel page. Click on the YouTuber's name or logo, it takes you to their page, but nobody ever does that or even knows they can do that. So yeah, I just got rid of it. It's not helping. It doesn't represent me. It didn't represent me well there. I do jokingly wonder if I should put just a video that says, please subscribe, for the love of God, please subscribe. Just subscribe. I need subscribers, thank you, please. And just like begging like that. But yeah, I don't want to probably waste time on that either. Yeah. But yeah, is there anything else that I can even bother to talk about as I'm losing here, and very possibly would have saved me some time just to have surrendered. There was something on the Bayonetta story that I missed. I'm stupid. What can I say? I don't have any better explanation than that. And when I'm going through these articles, I'm under this pressure to get through things fairly quickly, and I totally missed a part that was mentioned by other YouTubers. So I really like the audio read to me. And I don't think I'm that different than most people, instead of reading it actually directly myself. But at some point in the negotiations, they did offer Taylor, I believe is her name, the one calling for the boycott, the old Bayonetta voice actress, a $3,000 to $4,000 one session just cameo role is what it would be called. Yeah. So it is still very possible that her agent just misnegotiated, or she thought she could take that cameo role offer and show that as a receipt to hide the other negotiations before that point, or she just misunderstood. But that does definitely show that there was a level of breakdown at some point. If Platinum, the lease from Platinum hasn't said anything. In fact, Platinum and Hideki Kamiya have been fairly professional about being quiet about this, and they, if anything, they probably will just try and sue her, and that's the right move, frankly, is to sue her for slander or libel, or interference with a contract, or tortious interference, something like that. But yeah, there definitely was a point where the negotiations were breaking down. Bayonetta 3 is probably going to have, or at least it's implied that there might be alternate reality Bayonettas, or alternate timeline Bayonetta, so a cameo role from a different Bayonetta being voice acted by the old Bayonetta voice actress is probably what they were going to go for that. But otherwise, as far as that story has gone, I don't believe there's anything new to say. I asked one person what they thought a session should be per hour for voice acting, and this person knows nothing about voice acting or any of the ins and outs, and they said it should have been about $50 an hour. Which, yeah, if you know nothing about voice acting and how it is like other actors' job where you're spending 90% of your time getting unpaid and doing interviews and auditions, and you don't account for that time you have to spend, $50 an hour makes a lot of sense. It's way more than what minimum wage at $7.50 an hour would be. It's about 7 times as much. And that's where somebody who knows nothing would say, well, you're just talking. And that's not even, and that's how most people are going to think. They're not going to think about whether the voice acting actually is face scanning, face acting also, because that sometimes becomes a sneaky surprise where you think you're just doing voice acting in the booth and then all of a sudden you're doing face scanning acting. And that's been something that the Screen Actors Guild and the unions have complained about, or they don't recognize that you'll be yelling or screaming or saying the same thing over and over again. There is definitely something to be said about having experience and being trained to be a voice actor, too, but I wouldn't want to overemphasize that too much, because frankly there's plenty of YouTubers who have never been trained at all, and they are way better voice actors than at least doing their own voice than some other voice actors. And yeah, that's the only response I've gotten, so it's a sample size of 1, so it's not really anything scientific, but I definitely haven't gotten anyone to give me a number as far as what they thought Helen Taylor, what she thought what they thought a reasonable amount would have been. But there has been a lot of tribalism, certainly, and people going, well, yes, that is an insulting offer to be offered $4,000. But they don't justify that with any facts or understanding. It just seems like somebody can tell a lot of people that they should be insulted, and they will just be insulted, and that probably highlights just the edge and powder keg that a lot of people are right now as far as their nerves, is that they're just looking for excuses to be angry. It would have been really helpful for Taylor's case and her story if the other voice actors had come out and said, yes, actually, that is a ridiculously low amount of money and an insulting offer. But instead they came out and said, no, that's about right for many jobs they've done, and every job may be different. Okay. We'll toss this one. And then we'll activate this. And then we'll toss this one. And then we'll see how this works for us. Yeah, I think there's a slightly better way to do this than just jumping to this guy. But I think I'll try and save some time here. Inherently, you're trying to get victories quickly, and you do just want people to get exhausted and quit and rage quit. Okay, let's start going through the video game news. Yeah, I'm still actively trying to figure out ways to speed up. I'm not really doing anything to actually speed up. Well, Ragnarok will destroy everything. We'll activate that effect. And we'll add this to our hand. YouTube Gaming saying Video Game Donkey's 12th channel anniversary, which I guess that's an appropriate thing for YouTube Gaming to point out. It's way better than this tweet they just did, where they're just trying to get wrong answers only engagement. Elon Musk, I suppose it is somewhat worth mentioning, has claimed that he's gonna lay off 75% of Twitter, which on one hand may make Twitter completely fail as a company more than it already has. On the other hand, it might create a very different experience. So yeah, things might change quite a bit. Inherently, I was thinking about this, and this has nothing to do with video games, but things like Twitter, even compared to Facebook, really are services that were created from day one to enfranchise rich and famous people and disenfranchise everybody else. They were these giant popularity contests, and even Facebook has heavily pushed towards trying to get less of your friends and family on Facebook and just more celebrities and businesses on Facebook. and I don't think much holds together as far as Twitter if it was to fail. I doubt, even if it is Elon Musk's plan to make Twitter fail, so then everybody goes over to like Parler or Truth Social or some Trump. I think Truth Social is the Trump one. Like that's not likely to happen. People would just stop using Twitter and either naturally move to something else or just give up using it. I don't know how many individual people really are using Twitter. I don't use it to really communicate with people. I use it as a newsfeed RSS. I would just go back to Reddit and hope that there was something better than Reddit for my news sources. And I don't even need it for news sources, really. In fact, I could probably do without Twitter just fine. Because I already have most of the sources. It would just be people like Wario64 or Mario64 and Nibble. That would be the only people that I'd really need to follow extra. But yeah, that's just another example of YouTube gaming really not even being successful at doing Twitter. I did want to talk about Video Game Donkey though. There's been no news as far as his production company, if that really was a thing, which that's probably good, because unless he was going to announce his production company and announce a new game that is already ready to come out and have a whole like advertising push, which is really what a production company should be good at, like unless he was going to do all of that, him announcing the idea that I'm starting a publishing company and then going silent really is his move. I also would say, I bet my channel is about 7 years old, so if Video Game Donkeys is 12 years old, that would feel about right, in the sense that I'm just gonna activate on this, even though I don't know if that was actually going to activate anything. Yeah, that would seem about right as far as why Video Game Donkey has succeeded, and why people like me have not succeeded, in that they just were 10 years like I was just 5 years too late, and that's just going to be the problem with every YouTuber, unless you can be a TikTok celebrity and then pivot, or you can do something that just manages to go very viral with YouTube Shorts or something else. Sniper Ranger is on the chat. He says, Yellow, you playing the event? Yes, I am playing the event. Anything about a game called Them Fighting Herds? I've seen Them Fighting Herds. I don't know if there's anything new about it. I'll bring it up here in a second and we'll see if there's anything on Steam about it. It is a game that's been long in development as a fighting game based off of the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic reboot that happened a long time ago now, probably 4 or 5 years. But yeah, it definitely was like a brony game that at this point the brony culture, I'm not sure that really exists that much, and that culture hasn't just reverted back into a into the furry culture. I think at this point the equestrian girls sequels and continuations that exist, where they've turned the My Little Pony characters into just like teenagers, pre-teenage human characters. I think that is the only real series that are still being made or shown. I've seen a couple of those Equestrian Girls toys. But yeah, I don't know if it's particularly that popular, and there's so far not been anybody in my life as far as nieces and nephews that have quite got onto the bandwagon of My Little Pony or Equestrian Girls. I think probably I am not in the loop or kept in the loop as far as girly toys, and since I already do Lego, they kind of just expect me to be knowledgeable as far as Lego and of course video games, and so I became certainly the uncle to go to as far as what games to buy and what Lego to buy. I would like to keep up on the girls' sides of toys, but there is always this question as to whether they're really whether this next generation of kids really are going to have girls and boys toys. Like, that's gotta eventually go away as more and more kids are becoming, for lack of a better term, woke and gender fluid. Like, and that's probably for the better. There's just a ridiculous amount of emphasis that previous generations have put on current generations as far as that's a boy's toy, that's something boys do, that's something girls do, when that's just really not, when it really should be more gender fluid. Like, video games should be for everybody, and they should be fairly neutral for everybody. Minecraft is for everybody. Legos are for everybody. That's why I was particularly unhappy when the Lego Friends series came out, because that really did all of a sudden imply that Legos were for boys, when I personally never thought Legos were just for boys. Sniper Ranger said he activated the ritual spell on the Empyrean space. That was a while ago, and then he laughs. Lol, the My Little Pony community is kind of living good right now, even though the new spin-off is kind of trash. Yeah, I just haven't heard anything about it. I'm not following that community much. As far as, also, here's another example of THQ Nordic wasting everybody's time, playing along with this. Can somebody screenshot this? And that's literally just, you can see Twitter people after Twitter people after Twitter people just screenshotting the exact same image for no good reason. And you can see that there was a point where one of these got a lot of likes. I'm running out of time here. Let's just activate this so that doesn't become a problem. But yeah, that's just a waste of everybody's time and not really professional as far as what people should be doing. Alright. Okay, let's see if we can pull up them fighting herds. Here's the game on Steam for them fighting herds, since Sniper Ranger asked. You can see that it's 95% positive in the last 30 days. It's 94% positive over its lifetime. It was released April 30th, 2020. I think it was released in an early access state. There's a Season 1 pass, which came out October 18th, 2022, so I guess maybe there's some new content there. as far as all of that. But yeah, they don't have the actual license to My Little Pony, but apparently they have a cartoon producer, Lauren Faust, involved. And it's just a fighting game of basically the My Little Pony characters without the cutie marks. I don't think they have that or anything that could be copyrighted. Seems like there might be even a whole secondary thing to it that I was just unaware of. It says it has player versus player, an online PvP. So there's this whole secondary type game that in the previews I hadn't even seen. Yeah, and it looks like there's some kind of customization element to it. Maybe turning it into more of a gacha game than just a standard 2D fighter game. But yeah, I don't think there's anything new to say there. It's on my wish list. I will, if I ever get into covering fighting games, I would eventually like to play this game, but I really couldn't make it the first fighting game I played, because that would be a very weird, like, niche upon niche fighting game. Certainly. But yeah, unless Sniper Ranger has something new to tell me, it doesn't seem like there's anything new to be said about them fighting herds. There never seemed to be any major backlash or complaint about the game or any major interest outside of the My Little Pony community. Let's see. Let's see. Going through Video Games Chronicle articles. October's Xbox update lets users control the TV volume and mute startup sounds. It also includes bug fixes for several Xbox controllers, among other features. Control the TV volume is interesting. Is that HDMI CEC? Can you give specific numbers through HDMI CEC? I ask, knowing nobody will know the answer to that. Yeah. Seems like there's a mute, there's a regular, and then there's a really loud option. And that's not as much as the 1 to 100 scale as you would like, but yeah, that's the beginnings of something. Sniper Ranger goes low. People might disagree on the niche things, although he's misspelled niche. Niche is Niche. And unless I completely misunderstand the definition of niche, the My Little Pony community is definitely under the category of being a niche. Niche just generally meaning something that isn't really that universally known about or liked. Like pizza is not a niche, but pineapple on pizza is a niche. It also says, bro, Xbox and PlayStations are about to smoke the PC community even more. Which I don't think there's any point in engaging in tribalism around that. Like, as a PC gamer, as somebody who has a Steam library with just thousands of games, I still will fully be willing to say that the Steam Deck is a hard sell compared to the Nintendo Switch because you don't get the Nintendo games. And even though in every aspect the hardware is better on the Steam Deck, I will still say that it is a hard sell to build a good gaming computer compared to buying an Xbox Series S if you really are just going to have it on a 1080p TV at maybe 60 frames per second. And if you are giving games to teenagers or kids and all their friends are on Xbox, you should definitely give them an Xbox just because of the social aspects. And if they're on PlayStation, you should give it to that. So it has almost 100% more to do with what your friends are doing and just who you're playing with, what your community is, more than PC. Yes, ideally I'd like everybody to be on PC, and I think everybody would be better off on PC. We've seen more games disappear off of PlayStation and Xbox and Nintendo than we have on Steam. But some games have disappeared on Steam also. Yeah. Sniper Ranger goes low, never mind then on everything I said. It's definitely a conversation worth repeating. There's just a lot of push, certainly, towards that tribalism, and it doesn't really help anything. The tribalism is what leads to console exclusives, and saying console exclusives are good things, when everybody, regardless, should be unhappy about console exclusives. Like, every game should be on every platform, if at all possible. Everybody should have an opportunity to play every game, if at all possible. Because we're gamers, we're interested in games, and we definitely have to remind ourselves to be only interested in games and not drink the Kool-Aid as far as hardware and companies pushing an advertisement. We want, as gamers, we should all want everybody to play every game and give it a try at least, so that we have more people to play online, and we have more people to talk about it, and more people can enjoy it, certainly. Moving on, the Silent Hill livestream reveal happened. Not a ton was revealed on some games. Some was revealed on other games. This is an older article. We are hopefully, after today, going to stop seeing these repeated Video Games Chronicles articles. I guess I could have canceled that. But yeah, Xbox said they wanted to build a mobile game store to compete with Google and Apple. Good. Like, Microsoft or Xbox being involved in that field probably would bring better games to compete, and we really do need that. Bloober's Silent Hill 2 remake has been rumored or speculative for a long while now. Now it's been confirmed. That being said, we have to remember who Bloober really is as the maker of 2 or 3 versions of Layers of Fear, and that not being particularly the greatest of experience, and then making one other game in between one of the versions of Layers of Fear, and not really have made anything else. I believe that's who Bloober is, and that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in remaking Silent Hill 2, but there is also talk that Bloober is really on a very short leash about changing content, and really is just going to make a proper remake of the game and not change any of the content, really. It honestly feels like a lot of these Silent Hill announcements may be in reaction to the Resident Evil remakes that have come and succeeded. And so they may be very late to the party, and they may be an odd comparison to the Resident Evil 4 remake that's coming out also. They have said in the past that they were going to modernize some things, but the exact quote, I think, was taken out of context when they said that they were going to modernize some things as far as Silent Hill 2. There's an assumption there that when that quote was misquoted, that meant that they were going to get rid of like the sexy faceless nurses or Pyramid Head in the game, which would be completely unacceptable. But I don't think that's what they meant. What they, I think, meant is they're going to modernize it to be a third-person over-the-shoulder game instead of a fixed camera game, much like how Resident Evil 1 originally was, and then the remake made it control better. They're going to modernize control schemes like that, but I think that they're going to be telling the exact same story with the exact same characters. Pyramid Head and the sexy nurses might look slightly different, but I imagine they're not going to look that different. Silent Hill 2 in particular is this whole psychosexual experience, so if all of a sudden you tried to take out the psycho or the sexual part of it, it's not really going to be Silent Hill 2. There's, on Giant Bomb during the announcement, they brought up the idea that they hoped Bloober Team wouldn't change the puzzles, because even the puzzles have a thematic aspect, or a lot of the puzzles have a thematic aspect to Silent Hill 2. Which, yeah, I imagine that if it's true Bloober is going to be on a tight leash, it's going to be the exact same game as Silent Hill 2, or feel very much like the exact same game with the same puzzles and the same things you're supposed to do. And that's going to work perfectly well for me, because I've never played Silent Hill 2. I've never played any of the Silent Hill games. Inherently, though, this highlights a weird point in that they are going to either permanently skip Silent Hill 1 and never make a remake on that, or they're going to have to make a Silent Hill 1 remake after the fact, which is going to be weird. And then it gets even weirder as far as Silent Hill 3, 4, 5, like, there's definitely a lot of weirdness to this. There's a Silent Hill 2 movie in development, and that almost certainly is in part why this game is getting made. But it's also going to be weird to tie in a Silent Hill 2 movie to the already existing Silent Hill movies, or to forget the other already existing Silent Hill movies. One of the weirdest things, and it has nothing to do with the actual announcement of Silent Hill, is that Giant Bomb basically had Voidburger, I think is her name, talking, and the other 2 or 3 people on the live stream were not really saying anything. But there was a guy in the lower left-hand corner who had his, I assume it's his little girl, in the background. And she's just hanging out in the background while at any point she could have looked over the shoulder of the guy and seen, I assume, video of Silent Hill horror stuff, and he just isn't paying attention and doesn't care. So it really was an interesting 40 minutes or so of just bad parenting or not caring. And this wasn't a little baby or anything. This is probably 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, and very noticeably at one point they're talking about the previous Silent Hill movies and complaining about the barbed wire going up the hoo-ha, I'll say, of the of one of the bad girls, and that there was a child sexual assault part of the story in the Silent Hill movies, and they were complaining that both of those aspects were added to the previous Silent Hill movies and weren't actually in the games, because those previous Silent Hill movies were not connected. But yeah, Voidburger, if that's who she really goes by, was just talking about it, and like, the guy had headphones on, but I hope none of that was getting heard by the little girl. Like, I get it, certainly, as far as Giant Bomb not really being a business that's successful, and then like having a lot of people just work from home so it can be cheaper, and that there being some extra childcare savings on that. And I get the idea of kids being in the background during an average presentation, but you should be aware of that to a certain level, and your awareness of what you're actually going to be discussing should be a consideration. But yeah, that probably is a lot of baby brain too, where parents just don't think about things, or they just stop caring about things. Like, particularly in the case of like discussing Silent Hill, like the horrific aspects would concern me about talking or showing that imagery. Even just a small flash could potentially traumatize a kid around that. Or at least I would be worried about that. But yeah, if you were just talking video games, that would be fine. If it was just a regular Giant Bomb cast, I wouldn't be upset with them having a kid in the room. But also, at a certain point, why are you doing face cams if you have a kid in the room? Like, why are they doing face cams in the first place is a good question. Because I'm not sure that there's enough of a reason to have a face cam. I don't know if that actually was a better move. There was some other Silent Hill stuff, certainly. Annapurna Interactive is going to publish this Team No Code developed game called Silent Hill Townfall, which this really, I think, just showed a radio talking to you. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is a fairly simplistic game. No Code previously developed Stories Untold and Observation, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's like no character that actually walks around, or it becomes more like a visual novel, more like a point-and-click adventure game, something along those lines. It is also very possible that they have just no idea. Now, what's funny though is that each of these Silent Hill games really feels the need to I could have done something so much better with this deck, coming to think of it. I had a way to summon Zeus. I think I have Zeus in here. Do I not have Zeus? Yeah, I may not actually have Zeus in this deck for some reason. But yeah, each of these Silent Hill games is going to almost certainly have to be set with a different character, in a different world, basically a different reality. That's been the case always, and that is definitely highlighted in Silent Hill F or Forte. I think the curve on it probably means Forte, which doesn't Forte mean fast in music, or brief in music? So that may mean that this game is potentially going to play faster or be briefer. So there's some concern you could have. Probably not enough legitimate concern, but you could be concerned about Forte being not a complete game. On top of that, it's set in 1960s Japan, which takes it very far away from any previous Silent Hill game, which has always been Western people in a Western city. It puts it in the past, which then implies that the Silent Hill may get retconned as a concept, and there might be this Japanese town called Silent Hill, or a hill just called Silent Hill, and that is going to be the true origins of Silent Hill. Not that it really matters, because every Silent Hill world is seemingly built uniquely and psychologically based off of the person that was there or the people that were there previously. Like the sexy nurses showed up because of the character in Silent Hill 2. They stayed around because they were popular, but they don't really make that much sense to actually exist in later Silent Hill games, as I understand it. Again, having not played any of the games, and I really would like to play all of the games in a row, but that's not really what they're offering. And remember, this is Konami, so we have to be extremely cautious here. But yeah, this could just be a fancy F. And that probably maybe implies that this is the fourth game in their minds, and they didn't want to call it Silent Hill Shi, which is Japanese for F, but no, Japanese for 4, but the kanji for 4 is pronounced like or looks like the kanji for death, so they don't like anything with the number 4 in it. But I don't know if it really canonically would be Silent Hill 4 anyways. And even in that particular case, having death in the name would almost make sense to a Westerner, but it's still so considered so incredibly unlucky that they're afraid that it wouldn't sell. And it very possibly wouldn't, or it could just be that's the way it's been done. Sniper Ranger said nice hand a hand or two ago. Silent Hill Ascension was also announced as an interactive streaming series. The publisher says the series will let the entire community shape the canon of Silent Hill, which inherently, I think this again points to, it feels almost like there's a new team in charge of the Silent Hill properties. They don't know what Silent Hill is, which is, in fairness, I don't think anybody really knows what Silent Hill is, because they never bothered to really have the games have any connected canon or storyline. And so now they're going to just try and have the community play a choose your own adventure experience with Silent Hill Ascension. And that, I guess, will technically be the backstory for Silent Hill, which, I mean, I don't imagine it could be anything other than there is an evil force that latches on to the minds of sometimes bad guys, or I think mostly bad guys, and creates a lot more evil creatures based on that. And then it seems like it can go anywhere and be anywhere and form anything. Inherently, it's Alice in Wonderland. Is all it is. You go to this different world, you see a bunch of crazy stuff. The crazy stuff is somewhat connected to the main character. Just scarier. Which, interesting that there is talk of potentially doing, well, it's more than talk. There is efforts to actually bring an American McGee's Alice Asylum, the third game in the American McGee Alice series, out also. But I imagine that game will be at least a year after all this Silent Hill stuff comes out. Unless it's just going to be developed at a very rapid pace, or it's being developed in secret right now. See, I think there is a logic to this. To bring out this guy here, activate this guy's ability, special summon this guy here, and then special summon a 3 and link summoning. I need the link summon anyways, that's one of the daily quest challenges. So I should have been link summoning this whole time. Alright. So let's not activate that. Now, do I want to link summon anything else on this first turn? Well, I guess if I was just going to link summon more things, I should, but I'll leave it at that. That's pretty much a one-turn win if you can't put anything on the field. So here's the movie that was announced, the Return to Silent Hill, which, yeah, having returned to in the name kind of implies that you're still in the same Silent Hill film series. The same director made the first Silent Hill in 2006, which that's 16 years ago, and then Silent Hill Revolutions was made in 2012, but he wasn't apparently involved in that. Let's just activate this and see what happens. So yeah, it definitely already seems like from this Silent Hill announcement that there's a there's definitely a thought of oversaturation. Here it says Silent Hill 2's remake runs on the Unreal Engine 5 and has rebuilt combat system. There's also complaints about just how the main character looks, like his face is not great. If none of these videos want to load. But at a certain level, he looks like wrinkled and haggard and just like not well physically, which I think is kind of the point, that you should look that way as that character. Right now, this enemy character doesn't look like much, but maybe that's intentional, and maybe that's exactly what they look like in the main game. It is I guess, noticeable to say that Silent Hill is such an old game that the visuals are going to have been fairly simplistic. So they are in a catch-22 where if they update the graphics to have more details and look nice, they're going to also be accused of adding content or changing content. But if they just try to remake the low polygon blobs that the game originally had, or if they try to recreate the very short depth of field fog that the original game had, that's not going to look particularly good. Like, we're going to have, as far as the city, a lot more visibility while still having fog. Or you're going to have to adjust the camera accordingly so that you're looking downward and hitting a camera angle that doesn't look that far into the horizon. Alright, the first Video Games Chronicle article so far not involving Silent Hill. Microsoft claims that Insomniac's Wolverine game will be released in 2023. Sniper Ranger goes, "Oh, nerd hires." I don't know what he means by that. Apparently, developers claim that many studios are asking Xbox to drop mandatory Xbox Series S compatibility. Boston Studios devs argue that the console has turned out to be an albatross around the neck of production. If that is the case, it's probably a good albatross. Like, as silly as that might sound to say, developers left to their own accord are going to be rich, and they're going to have the ability to own an Xbox Series X. That's what I mean. Apparently they now have this. I gotta play too. Sniper Ranger says, "We got a Duel Links dude, sounds the cheeks getting clapped, alarm, nerd hires, fur hires." I'm just not following at all. Like, I'm not paying any attention to Duel Links. I'm trying to add block and play at the same time. And it's not working particularly well. Well, that didn't work. It says, "Look at your opponent's graveyard." Lol. Philo Messenger or Fur Hire. Oh, this is a card. Well, clearly this is not a deck that many people play. I've never even heard of this. Yep. suffice it to say, I'm not paying much attention to what I'm actually playing. Let's see if discarding 2 cards now will work. If it doesn't work, you just need to rush. Cannot banish it, then we've got to attack it. I'm just running out of time. Yeah. Developers will certainly love to force everybody to have the most expensive hardware ever. That is one of the things particularly that can be a problem with PC gaming in particular, is that you'll have PC game developers, a few of them, not that many really, try and add ridiculously high requirements. But yeah, I don't agree with that. What is with this that his ability is being blocked? Is it this? Or is it this? It might be that I'm trying to summon the wrong types of things. We probably will hit a point, I will say, in the next generation of consoles where there is only one version and there won't be a cheap watered down version of it. The CD disc aspect very possibly will be a USB-C plugin that you have to buy extra. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the next generation of consoles is as expensive as a Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5 costs now, but does not have a CD Blu-ray player attachment, and that you're going to have to pay $50 to $100 extra to get the disc attachment. Right. See if we can do this again. Nope, I don't want to activate now, and I don't have a choice. Sniper Ranger says imperm that, and then yes my guy, and I don't know, the 30-second delay is probably, he's probably commenting on something I did 30 seconds ago. But yeah, inherently, while I imagine there are a lot of developers that would like to get rid of the Xbox Series S compatibility requirement, I don't think there's a good argument to heed that, because I don't feel like there's a considerable difference in the hardware between Xbox Series X and S. Like, Like, I don't think the hardware difference is much at all. The only major difference would be I don't think the Series S can do 4K at like 6120 hertz. So there's some graphical limitations maybe, and it doesn't have a disk drive. But otherwise, I think the Series S has the exact same RAM and close to the same CPU speeds. Sniper Ranger says you're killing me. Yeah, he's trying to backseat drive, but at a 30-second delay while I'm not even paying attention. Inherently, another problem though is that for all the people that may want to get rid of the Xbox Series S backward compatibility, those are not the same people that are also trying to port to the Nintendo Switch, which is way underpowered compared to the Xbox Series S. And so anybody who's doing a Switch and some other console release is already having to dumb down or lower their graphics and lower their resource usage. Here we can see Alan Wake Remastered is now available for the Nintendo Switch. Of course, Alan Wake Remaster is a remaster of a fairly old game, so that should have been a little bit easier for them to do. Final Fantasy XVI's latest trailer sheds more light on the game's story, which I don't think I've been encouraged enough to care about Final Fantasy XVI to care about the story. And even if I did care about the story, there's probably a long time before it's actually released. Although I guess this contradicts that thought. Final Fantasy XVI's development has entered the home stretch, according to the producer and Video Games Chronicles. The Epic Game Store's next 3 titles have been confirmed. It'll be Saturnalia and Warhammer 40k Mechanicus. Haven't even heard of that one. Yep. We are fairly consistently getting 2 games. Now on almost a weekly basis from the Epic Game Store, but they are definitely not the most interesting games. Video Games Chronicle says Pilot Wing 64's improved quote-unquote frame rate on the Switch has broken the Birdman stage. What used to be a relaxing bonus stage is now a button-bashing stamina test. Which that is always the danger, certainly, of I wish I had a real video here to show the Birdman stage being run at 60 frames per second. But yeah, this is the problem of doubling the frame rate on games that are frame rate dependent, where the engine and the frame rate are connected, which pretty much all older games that would have had an engine at all are going to be frame rate locked and frame rate dependent. So they're going to have to try and put some kind of patch into that, but I don't know if Nintendo really is going to care. And then again, it's worth pointing out that whatever this image is of what the characters look like is not really what the characters look like when you're playing the game. I don't know how many people really are that interested in Pilot Wings anyways, because if they had been interested in Pilot Wings, then there almost certainly should have been a Pilot Wings game for the Wii. Like, the Wii really would have been the gateway point at which any older Nintendo product should have come back at that point. And if it didn't come back at that point, that should have been an indication that people just don't care about that IP anymore. Although Rare was also involved, and that explains why a lot of Rare games like Pilot Wing 64 didn't come back. Diddy Kong Racing is another great example of something that should have come back during the Wii time. Well, looks like I've lost here because I've played poorly. just go ahead and toss some things. Well, you know what? Let's toss this. And then let's toss this. You know what? I could have potentially... Now I can activate this. I can attack. And I can set a trap down. And then the turn. Buy myself one more turn. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Football Manager 2023's early access beta is now available for PC and Mac, if you're interested. A UK regulator has asked members of the public to share their views on the Activision Blizzard deal. This is actually very old news that is Video Games Chronicle is just getting around to reporting on. They asked for that feedback, and that's probably a standard political governmental way of doing things. Just to always ask for feedback. But speaking of the UK government, it doesn't have much to do with video games, but how the UK government is run will probably affect their economy throughout in every aspect. And the female prime minister to replace Boris Johnson, who left in disgrace, has left, I assume, in disgrace as the shortest ever running female prime minister. Not the first female prime minister by any means, but and Boris Johnson, who had just left in disgrace, is potentially going to run again to be prime minister, which highlights the insanity of prime ministers leaving and stepping down as an act of just showmanship and contrition to then turn around and come back and try to be in charge again. Let's see. Moving on. SimCity and Sims creator Will Wright is making a blockchain game, which is, again, I don't believe new news, because I think he had been trying to make something like a blockchain game for a while, or an NFT game for a while, even before blockchain and NFT were a thing. Most of his games in the past couple decades have been more scams than actual games. You can see this picture compared to this picture. He looks fairly old. Will Wright, honestly, I just don't think is a good producer or even idea man for games anymore. He got lucky with Sims and SimCity, and then that's it, really. And he's been writing it for a long time. Like, he was sort of involved with Fable, but I'm not sure if what his contribution to Fable was that good. And then as soon as he got to his own, he spun off to a new company and was no longer in charge of Fable. Nothing that new company has done has been particularly amazing. He made this weird, like, hiking simulator game that he launched in, like, Korea or Taiwan, and then a year later released it to the rest of the world, and then there was nothing to that. He had a cell phone game where people were just clicking on cubes over and over again. But yeah, every time you talk, I hear talk about every time I hear talk about Will Wright, it's always in a negative context, and it's never an announcement of a new amazing product. This guy is taking forever to defeat me. Video Games Chronicles has an update to the drama. Platinum has now publicly backed Bayonetta's new voice actor and attempts to defuse the series, the ongoing debate. I don't know if this is really even an ongoing debate as much as this is just mainstream video game journalism trying to make it an ongoing debate more than anything. Let's see. Probably should stop at this point. Alright, destroy cards. We did all 10 of those, destroy a card in special duels. We have now dueled 30 times in special duels. So the only thing now is I have 6 days to do as many link summons as possible. And I have 9 days to do dailies. And we have a duel live we need to spectate. And then in the shop, all the secret packs are now gone. And we're just trying to build up as much of that stuff as possible, as many gems as possible. And we're continuing to get these legacy packs, which continue to give us a few more cards that we probably will never play with. The fact that there's an entire series of cards I don't recognize just really highlights how many cards there are in this game and how many cards you can just ignore in this game and still do fairly well. That's a problem with Magic the Gathering also, is that you are always going to have way more cards than you could possibly memorize. And I think that's probably a problem with a lot of old games, is once you start to have to lean over the table and read what a card does just because there's so many of them and you can't remember all of the cards. That's weird. So yeah, we're gold tier 2. It would be nice if I could find some time to get to platinum tier 5. Otherwise I'm going to be dropped all the way down to silver at the end. But where am I going to find the time to play ranked in the next 10 days when I'm also trying to get up this rank, which is at gold tier 2. Like, there's a blue protector, so there is, I guess, a reason why you might want to go here. Which I guess there's no other way you can get that blue protector. And I guess there's no other way you could get this Link Master frame. So ideally you want to get the Diamond 1. I don't know if that's really going to happen. Particularly when I'm getting all distracted by playing Marvel Snap also. Let's see. The series developer has asked fans to stop disrespecting Jennifer Hale or any other contributor. That may be their exact comment and nothing else. Let's see if we can get an exact quote. We at Platinum Games offer our sincerest appreciation to everyone who has contributed to creating the Bayonetta series over the years, as well as the community that has served as its foundation. We give our full support to Jennifer Hale as the new Bayonetta and align with everything in her statement, which she didn't really say anything. We ask people to please refrain from any further comments that would disrespect Jennifer or any other contributor to the series. And see, this is very much a save face type statement. From Japanese, I imagine this may play better, but being translated to English, it comes off a little awkward. In her initial videos, Taylor alleged she was offered $4,000. The quote ends there, and then the rest of this is just backstory that we already know. And I'm gonna reload this and see if we got rid of some of the ads, because they're starting to put just straight up ads, more ads on Video Game Chronicle. Sniper Ranger says, "We'll see you later," and I guess okay, but I guess I should also point out that just because I'm stopping to focus on the news doesn't mean that the stream is anywhere close to being done. Let's see, trying to get uBlock Origin to block that affiliate notice. There we go. Yep, Japanese definitely just more not saying anything and trying to stop anybody being mean to current people that worked on Bayonetta 3, which in all fairness, it's not an invalid request by any means. There really is no reason to be mad at Jennifer Hale. You might as well be mad at the Japanese voice actress if you were going to just be mad at people. Or be mad at Hideki Kamiya as the producer for assumingly being the one in charge of a decision. But yeah, I don't see a real reason to try and attack or be disrespectful to any of them. It really is one of those situations also where from the outside looking in, nobody knows anything. So it's like if you saw on the street a couple of guys in a fist fight, there's really no reason why you would cross the street and try and break up the fist fight or try to jump in and side with one guy versus the other. You just don't know what was said, what's going on, or the people involved or what. So you would obviously just stay away from that, or in modern times you'd start filming it, or you'd call the police, which in modern times maybe you shouldn't even call the police if you see just a fist fight happening, depending on whether somebody's being beaten to death in a fist fight or not. If it's just a standard, well, that brings about another point, and this has nothing to do with video games, but even if you did see a fist fight, you probably should try to break it up and say, "Hey, I'm calling the police, stop it right now," and yell at them, and then run away in case they start to chase you. But yeah, even a fist fight can turn deadly very easily. It's people that don't know how to fight can punch the wrong place in the head or the face and just do an accidental lethal blow. You can be knocked out or knocked down and then hit your head on the concrete. It really is not safe to have a world where people think it's acceptable to fight at all. Like, it's really more dangerous than people think. Back to video game news. Mario Party 1 and 2 are the next Nintendo 64 games coming out on the Switch. It seemed weird when they announced this, that they would bring out two Mario Parties kind of at the exact same time. I know there's a lot of Mario Parties, but you would think you would have staggered that a little bit better than that. The Resident Evil producer says there are currently no plans for Code Veronica remake, but maybe, is the quote. Capcom could tackle the Dreamcast classic if the, quote, opportunity comes. Inherently, there is almost this irony around the Resident Evil remake, in that the things that Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3's remakes can do is get rid of a lot of the garbage side games that had Resident Evil slapped on their name, side games that really weren't Resident Evil games, that were just called Resident Evil games to get more sales. But the irony there is that even now, I don't trust Capcom to not make a side game and slap Resident Evil on it to get more sales, or side content, as it were. They still seem to be fairly happy to make DLC that is not really going to be in the main canon of the Resident Evil series. and they're trying to get away from kind of the weirdness and the silliness too. Noticeably in Resident Evil 3, I don't think there was a tofu mode. I don't think there was a hunk mode. There wasn't anything that crazy. But yeah, the Code Veronica part I think is going to be left on the cutting room floor, and they may just be pushing for the multiplayer stuff still. Remember, there are a couple of Resident Evil multiplayer games that are either still playable at this point or still in development at this point. I did see some kind of hands-on previews, not from Video Games Chronicle, of Resident Evil 4. They seem to be going for much more dialogue as it is. So now, instead of Hunnigan showing up on the communicator and them just having a couple sentences, I think they are going to have Hunnigan show up with the camera showing her talking to a computer, and so she's going to be much more zoomed in, and you're going to see more than just her face on a flat screen, and you're going to have a much longer conversation. You're going to have longer conversations between bad guys and other bad guys, between bad guys and good guys. I think even Ashley is going to have much more of a dialogue conversation with everybody, and that's really where they're going to make some major changes. That this is definitely going to be more of a narrative game and less of an action game. Quick time events in cutscenes are, I think, gone in the remake, so the boulder flying at you is going to have to be done a different way. The quick time events fight with the guy with the big knife, that really long cutscene, that's going to have to be done a different way. Quick time events out of cutscenes still exist. There's more environmental things, and the village has just been really made a little bit different and maybe a little bit bigger. So now in that first village fight, which is really what they were previewing most of, there are stairs that can be chopped by the chainsaw guy, and then they will break with actual physics. There are points where people can tear through the bottom of the floor, I heard. So it's going to play very differently. It's not going to be the exact same experience, which brings an argument to actually playing Resident Evil 4 with the fan mods still, even when the remake comes out, is that in that characters will probably have better AI. It'll be a different action experience, certainly. I'll also say, at first glances, it looks kind of like everybody looks a little bit older and a little bit uglier in the game. And maybe that is to fit with the horror aspects, but no longer does Ashley look like she's a freshman college girl. More she looks like she's a disheveled 30-year-old, early 30s, and Leon doesn't look like a pretty boy in his 20s or 30s either. As a character, he looks a little bit dirtier and more disheveled. The short stature Duke character in the game looks way older and way worse looking, and it makes a lot of sense for the bad guy characters to look way worse. Almost certainly everything will be voiced in the Resident Evil 4 remake. There's still a lot of room for changes, certainly. Like the entire second or third or fourth or fifth act, because that really was like a 5-act game, could be completely different. They really are just showing the beginning, and they probably will only ever tease the first village section. The almost exact same line, or the exact same line, is said by Leon Kennedy at the end of the village conflict where the church bell rings and everybody leaves. So there will be some level of Leon being a jokester, but I think they are going for more realism and more horror, which maybe in the gameplay means there might be less action, maybe not. So far, so good, I would say, from what I've seen. It doesn't feel like there's blaring changes that they're highlighting yet. It'll just be all the little things that potentially add up, if anything. Like, I can't legitimately justify saying not to play the remake if they just get rid of some cheesy lines with Ashley. And that's it. If they just do a little bit of censorship. It will be censorship, it will be worth mentioning, but yeah. The game, if it's 90% the same and it's better in many aspects, still would be recommendable. Let's see. Moving on, as far as video game news, we have 3 more Video Games Chronicle articles. God of War Ragnarok's graphic settings includes a 120 frames per second mode. Players have the option between 4K 30, 120 frames, and more. Which, how many people actually have monitors or TVs that can do 120 is a big question. Certainly. And does a game really need 120 frames per second? If anything does need 120 frames per second, it definitely is God of War. Kerbal Space Program 2 has an early access date and updates confirmed. The game will receive large updates in the months following the release. It launches in early access on February 24th, 2023, which I have zero faith in Kerbal Space Program 2 being good, but it probably wouldn't be a terrible idea as a YouTuber to try and play that game day one. But then again, it probably wouldn't help that much either. I imagine bigger celebrities who played Kerbal Space Program in what feels like 5 to 10 years ago will get early access, special access, and make a bunch of footage around these games before I could even play it. And then there's that same bookmarked ad from Video Games Chronicles, which that then brings us to Gematsu. We already talked about Neo The World Ends With You being available via Steam. Yeah, I just want to double check, make sure that's the game I'm thinking of, because I suppose there is a possibility that the non-Neo The World Ends With You might end up on Steam too, because I don't think that it is a straight remake of the first game, but it may be. I probably should do some more research on it before I think about buying it. We already talked about Silent Hill stuff, so we can jump through all of this fairly quickly. And since that was the big news, that means we'll probably go through most of the Gematsu stuff fairly quickly. Yep. The trailer for Silent Hill F here also just is really showing just a completely different game that has Silent Hill as its title. And noticeably, there was another Silent Hill game that was rumored, or even confirmed as a rumor, that was not mentioned here. So maybe that game is Silent Hill F, and they're just using different trailers. But there was one where there was a bunch of pictures on the walls, and it was set in kind of a modern time, maybe in Japan. Whereas this is 1960s Japan. It almost feels like there's going to be two Silent Hills, a Japanese Silent Hill and a non-Japanese Silent Hill. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there is yet another um, Silent Hill game in development, or that was in development. You can see all these flowers attacking her, and really nothing else, even though she had the metal bat. And see, this is basically her crossing the river to the Japanese equivalent of crossing the River of Souls with the ferryman and potentially being taken to hell or heaven through a gate. But you can see she doesn't actually make it through the gate. Instead, it turns her into this flower creature, and then her face falls off. Which, yeah, that's definitely horrific and gory. In fact, fairly gory for a Japanese thing. Yeah, but as a teaser trailer, it doesn't have much enemies shown or anything like that. So, no idea what Silent Hill F is. I can't remember it, but there's an anime where it's an anthology of horror stories in which bad people make deals with the devil to hurt other bad people or hurt good people, and at the end they always get dragged to hell in that exact same way. They're on a boat on a river of souls and being ferried through a gate to hell, or a Japanese hell. And it's not every episode that somebody actually chooses to make a deal with this devil-like creature that is actually more of a moe anime character, but most of them do make the deal. Moving on, Gamatsu says even if Tempest fan disc has been announced, it depicts the story that occurs after overcoming the witch trials. So, a fan disc, I don't even know what that is. For a Young Maiden Otome visual novel. I guess what they mean by fan disc is straight up a direct to DVD stream. Like, I'd have to assume that's what it is. Not really a stream, but a direct to DVD video. And what's funny is that it launched on the Switch via the Nintendo eShop on June 9th. So if you did have a DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, even if it was just an audio CD as a fan disc, which maybe it is, only that you can't play it possibly on the Switch. It would have to be some kind of MP3 type thing, which I don't think the Switch really has any desire to support audio things, MP3 things. It would kind of make some sense if it did have that feature to be an MP3 player, but I don't think it does. Notably, yeah, it would make a lot of sense that you could put MP3s and videos and even ebooks on the Switch and get more use out of the Switch, but I imagine you'd have to hack it to do any of that. Moving on, Fragment's Note Plus After Story has been announced for Switch. This is another visual novel, so we may finally have gotten past the Golden Week slump as far as announcements of visual novels, and it seems like, at least for those two, those are Switch exclusives. Star Ocean The Divine Force has character trailers for 2 characters, if you're interested in checking that out. Adventure game Pilgrims by Amanata Design is coming to the Switch on November 3rd. This looks like it's a kind of point-and-click adventure game, if I was to guess. The Famitsu sales have been updated. Let's see what's new. Dragon Ball The Breaker is making the 7th spot for the Switch. and the first PlayStation 4 game being in the 10th spot. And then Fortnite Anime Legends Pack, which seems like that would be DLC and not included, makes the 18th spot for the Switch as new. And then Dragon Ball Breakers for the PS4 is the 20th spot. Otherwise, very little PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 games. In fact, no PlayStation 5 games in the top 30 spot at all. OLED model selling still very good, but noticeably the Switch doing, the PlayStation 5 I mean, doing really well this week. Selling 18,000 units, beating out the standard Switch version. The Xbox Series S doing very well. This is yet another example of why Xbox and Microsoft should not listen to any argument about getting rid of the requirement that things be compatible on the Series S. Is that the Japanese markets and other markets around the world, I imagine, are probably selling Series S way more than Series X's. Like, that's considerably more Series S's being sold, and they need games to support that. PlayStation 5 Digital Edition selling pretty well. Switch Lite doing pretty awfully here. PlayStation 4 selling only 11. And the new 2DS still hanging on in there. We already talked about Alan Wake Remastered for Switch being available. A game called Cuckoo's Lost Pets for PS4, Switch, and PC launches December 6th. Let's see. Totally Accurate Battle Simulator for Switch launches November 3rd alongside a map creator update. Final Fantasy 16 Ambition trailer and screenshots are available if you want to check that out. Digimon World Next Order for Switch and PC launches February 22nd, 2023. It's currently available for the PS4 and PS Vita, so that's a fairly long delay. This is a different group of Digidestins, it looks like, which maybe that is the better way to go about making a Digimon game, is to not rely on what is probably over a decade of the original Digidestin storyline and characters, and instead just have a new group of characters and a better game. The one that came out before this was poorly translated to English. I vaguely recall them saying that, and way too much like a visual novel. I've noticed my computer seems to like to spin up the fans a lot more in the past couple days, although in all fairness, I guess it is fairly hot in this room. It's just that the humidity doesn't make it feel that hot. It says it's 79 degrees in this room. Definitely feels like a cool 72. But yeah, I may just be a little bit off as far as feeling temperatures these days. I definitely know the humidity is very low. Raiden 3 X Mikado Maniacs has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and Switch. If anything, people should be pushing for the dropping of the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 support way before you should be pushing for a Series S drop of support. This is a shoot 'em up game with what seems to be a decent amount of extras. I feel like Raiden 3 may have never come to the West, or some game like that never came to the West. Yeah, I was watching a YouTube talking about some game, but I can't remember what it is, so I can't say anything intelligent around that. A game called Lover Pretend launches December 1st in the West. It's a young maiden visual novel. I assume it's around the idea of pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend or lovers. Norn 6 Ver Commons for Switch launches March 2023 in the West. Of course, these are announcements that happen in groups because it's usually the same company. Either it's Access Games or Idea Factory that's announcing multiple games. With the announcements of these visual novels, there is an expectation as they start to come out that some of them might have some adult content in it, so that gets back to the tired question as far as, are there actually even Japanese adult games coming out at all, or are they just not coming out to Steam? A game called Cuddly Forest Friends is coming to the West in February. Notice how so many of these are coming to the West, which means there has been a delay in a lot of these games instead of just being globally launched. And we may start to see more of a trend towards that direction in which games from Japan or from the East are not globally launched. A game called Spooky Spirit Shooting Gallery is coming to the West in 2023. This looks almost like an arcade game. And most of these are coming to the Switch also. Only Tengoku Struggles Stray Side is coming to the West in 2024. So we're getting announcements for over a year from now at that point. And it launched July 28th in Japan. That's not a typo, it says 2024. So there is clearly still a desire to release these visual novels in the West. There might even be a bit more of a push to make these announcements and release them in the West now that Steam has said that they're going to try a little bit harder to not block things and censor things coming to their store. Although they've also said that they're not going to go back and re-look at any older games. So if something has been rejected by Steam in the past, they have no intention to rehash that fight. Record of the Argist, I guess that's how you pronounce it, Argist War, is coming to the Switch on March 2023. This time it is a remake of a PlayStation 3 game, but it does seem like it's going to be either globally launched or I would say that probably implies that it's coming globally, because usually Gamatsu will say in Japan if they mean in Japan, or if they say in Japan. The Record of the Argist War series is a name I recognize, so bringing it to Switch and making a new port is a smart move, although maybe it needs a remaster. Square Enix has trademarked Ember Storia Saga Emerald Beyond in Japan, which, yeah, Square Enix will almost certainly make another Saga game by that name. Resident Evil Village DLC Winter's Expansion, story trailer, and third-person mode demo are now available. This is kind of a great example of like a side story where I think there is a small desire to move the narrative and the events of Resident Evil 7 forward, and that's why they're bringing back some characters that are kind of involved in Resident Evil 7, even if there isn't enough desire to make them the new main characters of the Resident Evil series and just get rid of like Leon S. Kennedy and some of the other characters. But inherently also there's this problem where I think this character has Resident Evil style mutation powers and basically magic powers, and having a protagonist with magical powers doesn't work in a Resident Evil series, so she could really never become a major character, could she? Resident Evil Reverse crossplay early access period set for October 23rd through 24th. This is that online game that I was talking about, or at least one of them, where they are still trying to have these multiplayer, still trying to have these side game elements, even though it almost certainly is going to fail and almost certainly will be abandoned. And this is definitely focusing in on a lot of the older characters in the Resident Evil series that aren't really characters in Resident Evil Village. At a certain point, they need to be just killed off. Really. Just like Leon Kennedy gets killed and Ada Wong gets killed and just everybody, Hunk gets killed. Just kill them all off slowly as an experience. If for every single Resident Evil mainline game, one character heroically dies or gets killed, that'd be great. And then you could bring them back as clones, or you could say they faked their death. That's fine. I still suspect that Wesker is potentially going to show up at some point. But they also tried that with having like Wesker's son in Resident Evil 7 right? Or 6. I think it was Resident Evil 6. And that didn't really work either. That's kind of the problem there, is that people... The Resident Evil series just has way too many characters, and there isn't a consistent writer amongst the series. It's just, hey, do you want to create a new character for this zombie apocalypse game, and then forget about them, or bring them back for one other game, and that's it. Resident Evil 2 Cloud, 3 Cloud, and 7 Biohazard Cloud, all getting released for the Switch too. And yeah, here you can just see that whole thing once again being highlighted, is that you have different characters here versus different characters here versus different characters here. Although maybe this guy is in this game, he's not on the logo. Let's see. Resident Evil 4 extended gameplay, second trailer, screenshots, and special editions announced. Maybe Gamatsu will show it a little bit better. So here you can see, here's Ashley. Her hair is longer and her face is, I think, a little bit longer. It makes her look a little bit older. The coat also makes her look a little bit older, but it makes a lot of sense too in the area they are in that she would be in a coat. She's still really in the orange sweater and the plaid skirt, and I think she had the knee-high boots. But yeah, they're trying to make her look a little bit older and frankly a little bit uglier. Here you have Ada Wong, not looking particularly good. I'd say that's pretty much what the face is. The whole problem with the whole game is that you look at each of these faces and you hope that they do another lighting pass or final pass on them, because they just look too realistic. The inventory sorting system is almost exactly the same, except for now there is a legend to tell you what you can mix and match, which is fine, really. Here you can see this is the bottom of one of the rooms in the village, and it is the exact same layout, but it might be a little bit bigger. Here's the castles, screenshots. Here's the preacher character. Here's the chainsaw guy. I will say, yeah, like these monster faces look way better than the non-monster people, probably because you're going to be looking at them when you're actually playing the game. There's some trading, obviously, so that's still going to be a thing, but noticeably there is. Let's see if we can make this picture bigger. It seems like there might be 2 different currencies here, so there might be microtransactions in the game. Well, no, it actually looks like it's 3 different currencies. Which there was a shooting gallery aspect that you would win rewards based on doing a shooting gallery, so maybe that's what this is, where you're getting extra things for finding emeralds or doing a shooting gallery. But then I don't know what this currency is when you have another currency here. Yeah, there's a danger of some kind of premium currency, but that wouldn't really make a lot of sense either, because yeah, if you really had to buy a premium currency, I don't know who would do it. Or because it would seem like you could probably have a new game plus and then just grind out the currency otherwise. I don't think we got an answer as far as whether they're changing the save system. I imagine they aren't. Here's Hunnigan, and in all fairness, I will say she looks pretty great. But yeah, no longer are you going to see her as a flat-faced character on the communicator. You're going to see her more from this perspective, and they're going to have more dialogue here, is what I'm hearing. Here is the menu combining legend. But yeah, looking at Leon, a little bit older, and I still wouldn't be surprised if there's like a Japanese face and then there's a Western face for Leon, and that in the Japanese version he is more Japanese of a character, although that doesn't really make any sense at all. But yeah, all their hair seem to be really wildly unkempt, and they just don't look good. But how many times are you going to actually see the faces of these characters? It's not going to be as much as you think, but it probably will be a little bit more than you would have in the original game too, because there's going to be more dialogue and more talking. And see here you can see a big guy, and he's been completely reanimated, but he doesn't look bad for what he's supposed to look like. Ugly works for the bad guys. This guy, I don't like his smirk. Again, unkempt hair. Really kind of ugly, kind of in shadow here. Like, none of these screenshots are doing the greatest of service to the characters. Here you can see the salesman guy, which it's weird he never showed up in any other games, as far as we know. Here's a great example of this character where ugly really works well. He does look older and uglier, but that's exactly what you would want. It does seem like they've intentionally had like bugged out eyes on the chainsaw guy so you can see the eyes, but yeah, that doesn't look bad. It looks a little cartoony with the bugged out eyes, but not terrible. See, is there much more that we could see in these screenshots? Let's see what the deluxe edition gets you. Different skins for the different characters, and maybe a free map expansion or better guns. Seems like there might be an original version of the game or an original version of the skin. And then there's selling ridiculously overpriced statues and things. Let's see. The deluxe edition includes in-game content including costumes, weapons, a treasure map, and more. So it doesn't seem like there's too much there. I'm not as hyped as I might have been, certainly, around a Resident Evil 4 remake, but I'm still fairly hyped around it. Like, the visuals of the faces is the main problem that I have right now, but then there is a lot of doors open for other problems later. See, both Mario Party and Mario Party 2 coming out on November 2nd. exact same day. Star Ocean: The Divine Force has an opening movie if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Burst Forth Chorangon Breath Director's Cut launches October 27th. I really need to rush here. Aspire Ina's Tale is now available for PS4. My cushions have all gone flat in my chair. Probably should take a moment and see if I can adjust for that. Sit up higher. That's probably the best I could do. The only other thing I could have done would have been to lower the back on my chair, which I finally moved it from away from the wall, so I could lean back a little bit more, but I then would sound awful. Let's see, Relayer Advanced base game and DLC are going to launch at a limited time discount price, which 10% during launch discount is something we definitely just don't see in video games. Like, maybe you get a pre-order discount if you pre-order games, and it's for the first 7 days if you're interested. It's also a PC only game. Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie launches in the summer of 2023 in the West for the PS4, 5, Switch, and PC. It's interesting how far in the future we'll start to see announcements for PlayStation 4 versions. Although in all fairness, they could announce PlayStation 4 versions well into the future and then just cancel them. So it doesn't really hurt them to say there will be a PS4 version, even if there aren't PS4s still being sold. Kerbal Space Program 2 launches in early access. We already talked about that. I'm not really sure what Kerbal Space Program 2 can add to make it better than Kerbal Space Program 1. You just want more features, more components to build on your rocket ships, and more of a kind of adventure randomization roguelike experience potentially, where you could start at the beginning and go through a career mode and then maybe start over a career mode and then have to build up. Anno 1800 console edition has been announced for the Xbox Series and the PS5. Tactics Ogre Reborn details its skills, Battlefield, Wheel of Fortune, Chariot, Tarot, World Tarot, more classes and characters. So that's a lot of info on a game that visually does not interest me at all. And then Tactics Ogre Reborn has an opening hour of gameplay, which for that type of game is not much, I imagine. You can definitely see how this Reborn is a remaster and the graphics are much more colorful compared to what they were before. I don't know if there's really a good reason why the graphics would be so dull in an old version of a game. Like, unless this game came out back in the days when we only had 265 colors or 256 colors or 32-bit color palettes instead of 64 color palettes, you wouldn't have something of this resolution that couldn't have been this colorful in the past. It would have just been an artistic choice. But that certainly does happen on occasion, where somebody does just decide to make a game look one way and then decide they want to make it look a different way and change the color palettes, change the visuals. Alright, let's start going through games you have on Steam. Here's a game that I definitely would lean towards calling a girls game, so I'm always interested in girls specific games, even though I did say just earlier in this stream that I would kind of prefer if all games were for all genders, and most games do kind of imply that they are for all genders. We have a kind of black and white card game. Give it a chance, but I won't give it a spotlight. Space Dudes versus Alien Dudes is obviously a garbage game. I feel like my mouse is moving slow because my hand is moving slow. Yep. My hand is tired. Too much Lego yesterday, too much clicking today. So we're just going through all of these and on the moon shooting robots. There might be something to that. It kind of has a feel of the game where you're a courier. What is that? Death Stranding? Yeah. Death Stranding on the moon? Not a terrible thought. As an idea. Then we have a simplistic pull game. That's going to be a no. Then we have a game where you're just clicking on fluff, it looks like. Collect fluff balls from a cat. I'm going to say no to that. This doesn't look interesting. Miko's Wish is an adult game. Let's see. What kind of game is it? Miko's Wish. I think it's probably a Chinese game selling itself on lewdness. But I cannot tell. It says it's a match 3 game, I guess. And it doesn't have any actual mature content warning about the game. And it probably is a cell phone port. And it's not in the adult section. So it actually is fine to show. But yeah. Noticeably, as far as the language support here, there's Chinese below the fold, but not above the fold. And yet, see Chinese here, and you see English there. Yeah, defense, I think we can say immediately a no to that. Port cranes, container age. I suppose it would be nice if there was a way to kind of fast forward through this process and just be on the spacebar ready to pause. Next game we have here is called Only Fap Simulator 3, which is 3D models in a slightly more realistic style, although the character does have purple and blue hair highlights in her hair. Different colored hair is not going to go into the flat 2D anime style category. It's coming soon. It's in the adult section. It's English only. And it doesn't look like much more than a clicker game. Doing kind of like an OnlyFans clone. Need to figure out why sometimes these icons don't load. Like, I think Firefox tries to change the fonts and it makes for a bad visuals. It tries to apply like a theme, dark theme, that doesn't really work. Which either that's because of a plugin I've done, or that's just because of Firefox. This game Agartha is rated very positively, and it's on my fall list. It came out October 21, 22. Why am I looking at it now? Did I wrap around to the fall list and I'm going through A letter things. I don't know. Either that or this game just came out of early access as a Turkish full audio game, which is an interesting FMV Turkish game. Well, I'll put it on the wish list and we'll try and see what else. Like, could it possibly be that after the letter A, the next game in the fall list starts with E? Have I cleaned up the fall list so much that that's the case? This extreme, no, this is not on the fall list. That game must have just come out of early access, which I think probably highlights or how many games stay in early access forever. And if anything, I probably should have left it on the fall list at that point, just to see if people are still reviewing it in the next 30 days positively. Next we have a game called Crystal Goddess, which is a 2D platformer with what I wouldn't call anime style animated characters, but flat 2D characters, more fantasy style. And it does seem like in the platforming the characters are running around either naked or semi-naked, and when they get caught by enemies they get sexually assaulted by these demon enemies that are running around, or you're playing as a character trying to free specific enemies or specific girls. That might be the case too, is that yeah, seems more like there's a red-headed girl that gets caught a lot of times, and that's not one of the characters you play as. Well, it is a different type of game. I definitely would still put it in the Western game category. It does support English, German, Spain, Spanish, and Japanese, it claims. And so, what do we do with a game like this? I guess we put it on the fall list and we run the risk. Like, it is a very rare occasion when you have a game like Crystal Goddess that looks like it actually has gameplay elements here, and kind of a Metroidvania platforming adventure type experience, but it has adult content in it also. So now is the question certainly to ask is just put it on the fall list, I guess, and wait until it has some reviews. And inherently, the world, the tiny niche upon a niche that is adult video games, well, it's not a niche upon a niche, it's just a niche itself. That tiny group of people that play adult video games need to band together and review adult video games, try and improve it. This is funny how this game has really no nudity or sexual content, but they're saying we have a free camera angle, and they were able to capture the character's underwear. And what's funny is this seems like they paid somebody else to write this description for them instead of just having this. Yeah. This is a weird, like, Chinese or Japanese only game that's been, I think, translated. As for what this game actually is, though, it looks like it's just a weird kind of asset flip game, flying around the space craft. Seems like that's what it is. Regardless, it doesn't support English, so it doesn't matter. Eldritch House looks interesting. Although it's coming soon and has no release date, so I'm not going to put it on the fall list. Wormy. Looks like a generic platformer. And there is certainly something to be said that this generic platforming game, Wormy, probably looks slightly better than the adult platforming game, and yet the adult catches my interest way more than a generic 2D platformer, because there's been considerably more of these games that have been done considerably better. But the same cannot be said for adult games. But at a certain point, there is also an argument to don't bother to add adult content to your game if it is not important to your game. I don't want to tell an artist how to do their own art, but if you are going to make something with adult content in it, it needs to be important overall to the narrative. This game Set Sail looks like it's just a bad or generic visual novel. I'd say generic more than even bad. Because it's just so much easier to sell a game that doesn't have a random sex scene in it. Even in movies, unfortunately, that's become the case too, where the random sex scenes are gone. Where they used to, in the old days before the internet, that was the only way you could see any nudity or sex scenes, is to have a random scene in a movie in the first like 5 minutes of a movie. And after streaming became a thing and the online the internet became a thing, there's just no need to try and sell a bad movie by having a nude scene in it, or sell even a good movie by having a nude scene in it. And so in the past decade and a half, 2 decades, we have considerably seen less and less of that, and more of just movies being action movies or being Marvel movies. Marvel movies would be particularly weird to have a random sex scene in there. Or if there is something like that, they almost certainly fade in and fade out instead of actually showing anything. This next game is called Furry Arena 18+, which just looks like it is a asset flip first-person shooter with a furry naked character, Space Girl, furry fox character. Like, the 2 screenshots don't even make a lot of sense to be in the same game. And that again is English only, and it's coming soon, so that's another one in the furry category, or Western game category, if we're going to say Westerners are the only furries that exist, which maybe that's the case, maybe it isn't. I don't know if I've ever seen a furry in Japan, because inherently Japanese people don't need to be a furry to cosplay. They would just cosplay something else. Or if they are the type of furry that is just has huge amounts of social anxiety, they just wouldn't go outside anyways. There might be something to be said. This doesn't have a release date, so I would have given this a follow if it did. There might be less demand in Japan to be sociable, and it may be easier if you do have anxiety to just hide in your room and be a himokori. I didn't pronounce that word right, but yeah, just be a shut-in. It's very easy to be a shut-in in Japan, and that's probably where anybody who would have been a furry is, that they've just become a shut-in and just lived in their own world. Is there anything to this game? I don't think there is. Let's see. Is there something to this game? For $1.79. English only. 10,000 words, 5 extra scenes, an arcade minigame. Yeah, I don't think this visual novel has enough in it either. I kind of like this art style. I will say that this is somebody who says, "Oh, I can't draw or don't want to draw that much detail, so let's just do a big circle for a head and some simplistic facial gestures, and then a tube for a neck and curved shoulders, and that's about it. We'll do a little bit of hourglass figures, and that's it." A simplistic style, but not too simplistic. Although you get into like this, and then that's really simplistic. Yeah, it just doesn't really seem like there's enough game here though to put on the follow list. This doesn't look like anything. Garrett Revenge doesn't look like anything. Father's Day here as a horror game. Yeah, we are very close to Halloween, and there's just no real horror games. This one doesn't have a release date either, so no follow for it. This game, Faith, the Unholy Trilogy. I feel like I've seen this one before, or seen an announcement for this one. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but as far as a visual YouTube short, I'm going to say no to that. I do definitely have a thought, certainly around the idea of maybe making a lot more shorts and just focusing on doing tons and tons of shorts, like just unlimited number of shorts on my channel. Hopefully that wouldn't irritate too many people. Here we have Gotham Knights, and we can see it's 60% positive, which by default this is going to get a follow because it's just relevant enough to get a follow. I wasn't expecting too much from it. Let's see what people say. The awful performance is just the tip of the iceberg. The slow-paced combat alongside sluggish transversal makes this borderline unenjoyable, even when the game isn't constantly dripping to 40 frames or less. Which, yeah, that was the suspicion as to why it was locked to 30 on consoles, is that the engine is just so broken, and it's just the same broken engine as the previous Arkham game. I've seen 40 to 120 frames per second. It seems like there's a fairly inconsistency there. I've been unable to find a way to consistently get 60 frames outside of the city. Hopefully the devs fix this. Stuttering after stuttering, can't even join invite friends. AIs are a joke. Way too many performance problems. Somehow the game doesn't care if I'm playing on max or low settings. I just get constantly low frames per second. My screen is also stuck in a blurry vision. Can't recommend it like this. The game is a big letdown, super disappointing. It really sucks to me, and plenty of others waited so long for a new Batman game just to get this atrocity. Runs poorly, gameplay is lackluster, voice acting is shoddy. Just everything about it is mediocre. And here they're giving you like exact specs sometimes, as far as makes Arkham Origins look like a masterpiece. Yeah. This is a rushed out, I assume, Warner Brothers game, as Warner Brothers is going through growing pains, to say the least, as being acquired and shuttering things. And I honestly wouldn't expect that even the next Batman game, even if this is a game without Batman in it, is just as bad. They needed to probably have scrapped this project and started over on the Unreal Engine. And at some point, you know, Warner Brothers games might get sold off. The IPs and the licenses might get sold off to a completely different game instead of Warner Brothers Games Montreal and QLOC making a game. Monster Road Trip, is this from the same people who made Monster Prom? Yep, Monster Prom 3, Monster Road Trip. I will give that a follow in the short. Yeah, if there was only a way to fully automate making the YouTube shorts, that would be great. Really. If it was just like at a certain time every day, it was made. Right, so is this an adult game? Yes. Bonerdale 2022 edition. It is flat 2D characters, but again, I wouldn't say in the anime style. So I really am being a little unfair by saying, all right, well, anything that is in the anime style is considered anime, but anything that's flat 2D that I don't personally consider anime style is considered a Western game, and anything 3D that's in an anime style or not in an anime style is considered a Western game. So only a quarter of all types of visual depictions actually fall under the category of what I would actually consider an Eastern game. I'm not really sure what this really is other than just like a visual novel dating sim game. It almost feels like almost a hidden object adventure game where you're just walking around. Like, the only screenshot you have here is this character looking to adjust himself / pop out a boob. I wonder if you're playing this guy, although it's kind of weird that the text is not bigger. As an adult game, though, it supports English only. It's $5.99 and it's in early access. I don't know why it's in early access, but it once again puts me in this weird position where I kind of need to put it on the fall list. There might actually be a game that's good here, although I question if there's a Bonerdale 2022 edition, where is the original version and why is it in early access if it's a remake? Because that doesn't really make any sense. And then next we have this Chinese game that looked kind of like it was an adult visual novel, but I'm not sure it really is. It doesn't really seem like it's just a visual novel. It isn't. I just kind of assumed it was because there was a character who was naked holding a briefcase in front of him, but that was at the beginning of the trailer and all the other screenshots don't really corroborate that. It's English and Chinese only. It looks way more like an RPG game. Right, we have a couple more games to look at. Let's see. Here's another adult game. And we may have an interesting one here in Gachi Natsu. GACHI-NATSU. And then there's a bunch of Asian text around that. I think this is Gay Hunks. Yep. It is hunky, muscly guys with giant in circumference and in length penises being shown in the screenshots. Yeah, it's just guy on guy gay game. It says it's coming soon. It says it supports full Japanese. If this game actually comes out, that would be fairly surprising because guy on guy gayness is not as well tolerated in Japan as, say, girl on girl gayness. None of these characters inherently seem like they are Japanese, though. I suppose I could cover a game like this if it had a release date and put this on a follow list. Although my follow list is just going to be flooded with adult content at a certain point here. It would be pretty much the same as censoring out a guy on girl story or girl on girl story. And at a certain point covering any of those kinds of games and censoring out the money shots, as it were, makes it questionable whether it's really worth playing those games, because then you actively are looking for really, really good story, and most adult games don't bother with that. This game, Eureka, doesn't look like anything. Here we have GameDeveloper.com's articles, and we'll burn through those fairly quickly. Konami's new Silent Hill games are all from external studios, which that's not surprising because I don't think there really are any internal studios. There are people that probably think they work at Konami and as internal studios, but I don't think there's enough manpower there or skill there to really make any kind of video game, let alone a Silent Hill game. Valve has promised to be more consistent, to give more consistent updates as far as Steam's regional prices. With various regions of the world faced with the possibility of economic recession, Valve plans to update regional prices suggestions at a more consistent pace, which almost certainly that is a response to internal conversations between developers and publishers and Valve, and they're just saying it publicly for kind of PR reasons. David Wu, the Pseudo Interactive co-founder, has passed away at 47, another fairly young person. The first passing, Wu co-founded Pseudo Interactive in 1995 with Rich Hilmer and Daniel Posner. When the studio was revived in 2021, he returned as a lead developer. The question I guess to ask, though, certainly is, what did Pseudo Interactive ever make? Let's see. They developed 2006 Cell Damage and Sega's Full Auto franchise, and then they were shut down in 2008. And then he joined 343 as a technology director of Halo 4. And then at some point he also revived Pseudo Interactive. Not in a lot of games there, as far as that I recognize. But then again, I guess that's a problem of dying before you're 50, is that you really won't have created that many games because you'd spend 4 to 10 years working on a single game. Bungie might be reviving its Marathon franchise. Destiny 2 developer Bungie is reportedly developing a revival for an old shooter trilogy, Marathon, which ended back in 1996. I don't recognize the Marathon series. I may have heard the name, but I couldn't tell you a single thing about it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge was Focus Entertainment's Quarter 2 highlight, which that's probably not surprising because I don't know what else they would have even released in that same quarter, too. Is Focus Entertainment no longer called Focus Home Entertainment, because that used to be the name of the company? Yeah, a little inside baseball. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is not to be confused, though, with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collection, which I imagine may have been released by different people and may have not included Shredder's Revenge, probably didn't. The subtitle here is that Focus Entertainment's financials reflect a shortage of 2022 titles, which that was definitely noticeable. this year, up until this point, that there's been very few titles coming out. Let's see. Omega Strikers developer Odyssey Interactive nets a $19 million in Series A round of funding, which, okay, so they got funding, sold stocks and shares. We already talked about the Bayonetta thing. I think probably by Monday we won't have anything new to say around the Bayonetta thing. I don't think too many people are going to give Taylor any more press, even if she did come out and say something, unless she can really show some evidence and receipts. And then social pressure opens the doors to game addiction, says the State of Survival players, which honestly, I just don't think I could say that gaming can be an addiction in the real world, as far as the way the medical industry and the DSM-5 defines addiction. You're not chemically addicted to the dopamine hit of being happy when playing a video game. You could have obsessive compulsive disorder and be diagnosed with that, and you could have an obsession to do something in a game, but if you were actually doing that, it probably would be like a clicker where you were just clicking over and over again. It wouldn't be a game where you're making different decisions and strategies and all of that. It would make a lot more sense if this was phrased social pressure opens the doors, and opens the doors is not a very scientific term anyways, to gaming, or to what would be a good term? I guess you might say unhealthy gaming amounts or length. Like, that's about it. Like, there's not people that are going into withdrawal because they're not gaming, and anything that just makes you happy and gives you dopamine that your brain naturally creates is not really an addiction, as much as alcohol is an addiction and smoking is an addiction and drugs are addiction, in which they change your brain chemistry and make you dependent on those things, alcohol, smoking, drugs, to then get the chemicals that your brain then desires or needs. And frankly, anytime anybody wants to talk about gaming addiction, it's because they're just trying to get free press. And it's very weird for a game company to push that narrative, other than the fact to say State of Survival is not really a great game. State of Survival is, in fact, kind of one of the awful games on Google Play and probably Apple too, that has awful repetitive advertisements that they get. I think Fiverr actors or just really cheap actors to make these commercials for, and you just see tons and tons of ads for State of Survival, and they are very misleading and deceptive. So you really wouldn't want to trust State of Survival for any source, let alone scientific source. They're actively in their commercials putting pressure on you, maybe not social pressure, but some kind of pressure to buy and play State of Survival. So they really aren't a good source in any way. We have a game called Who Stole My Beard from 2021. I think we can remove that from the follow list, just because it's not relevant. Who Shuffled My Shapes? We're still at the W's on this. I'll give this more time. I probably will just have to make an executive decision to say yes to this. Who Pressed Mute on Uncle Marcus, which is a murder mystery. It's mostly positive. Full motion video. There's a lot of COVID type people making full motion videos that where it's just put a camera in front of these people. Although in all fairness, this looks like a fairly nice camera shot in each of these, so it probably are sets. Like I can see this being the corner of like this room being the exact opposite corner of this room here, and it being a set where they just spin the camera a little bit, or they decorate the background a bit. I guess I'll give this just more time, though. I have no real reason to rush to put that on the wish list. Who is the Red Queen? Looks like it's an LGBTQ plus visual novel. Based on Alice in Wonderland. Horror, fantasy, Yuri visual novel. English and Spanish, Latin American. If it doesn't support the Japanese language, I don't think they should use the Japanese word for lesbian, Yuri. Even if that is kind of the standard way of describing lesbianism in visual novels. I'm just going to give this more time and not bother to decide. Who is the liar? Everything is going to be who is. This is mostly positive at 70%. Is this a game you play single player? Yes. Yep. This can go to the wish list. Whitehaven is a mixed horror game, and that's going to be the case for most horror games, is that if they get any reviews, they're not going to be particularly positive if they're just asset horror games. White Shadows looks very visually interesting, and it's mostly positive, so that can go to the wish list. White Girl, this is I think a Japanese card game slash visual novel. It's like a color changing strategy game from February. It's English, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. See, if I was to get this and stream this, I can't help but feel like I'd get a lot of views from people who have no interest in this game at all. And it's just an unfortunately translated word, I imagine. Whereas if they localized it a little bit better, maybe there is an argument to say white woman or white queen. White queen would make a lot more sense, as she's sitting on this like throne as a character. Yeah, white queen would make a lot of sense, because then that would be like related to chess or reminiscent of chess. I'm gonna leave this on the follow list and think about it some later. It does occur to me, this White Day VR, the courage test, I'll leave because it's a VR game, even though it is mostly positive. I could go through my wish list and make a bunch of shorts around my wish list, since I haven't probably covered most of those games. That could create some different types of YouTube shorts instead of doing daily video game and just doing the same thing twice. It would be the exact same thing with just a different text and description to it. Yeah, I could do that if I find some extra time and start, say, in January 1st, and then just try to contextualize it, because right now just having thought of the idea it would be basically me just e-begging or saying here's some games on my wish list that I want to play on my channel, but I don't, and that doesn't contextualize it to the viewer well enough. So there is some way I need to make it relevant to people that I'm highlighting these specific games, and I don't know what the trick there would be. Once I think of a trick there, that could work. It would get me more YouTube shorts, and YouTube wants more shorts, even if viewers don't. So, and it does get me a lot of views, and it's not getting me a lot of subscribers. Alright, well, while this is all happening, I'll scroll down my Twitter feed and see if there's any more news for this Friday. Otherwise, we are going to be done for the week. But yeah, I imagine there isn't going to be as much as news coming out this late on a Friday. This new Tales from the Borderlands game seems to be coming out very quickly now. So, I don't know if it came out today or if they're still just promoting it to come out sometime next week. But I am seeing a lot of push to get people hyped around it. Well, apparently the Smash director Sakurai reveals early prototype footage. We could probably talk about that on Monday, but yeah, there's a video here. This is GameDeveloper.com's article. MXR has gotten a second strike for unwanted sexualization of Gordon Ramsay. Poorly edited his face on a bikini-clad girl playing Twister. We genuinely had no idea this was not allowed. He isn't even a woman. If we get one more strike, our channel will be deleted. Help at Team YouTube. Which MXR is just constantly getting these strikes and pushing the edges of whether or not he's going to get his main streaming channel or his MXR Plays channel. The streaming channel is MXR Plays, and then MXR Mods has been pretty much abandoned at this point because it's been so locked down for strikes, community guideline strikes. But following MXR as a YouTube content creator certainly helps me see where the line too far is, even if I don't know exactly where the line is to dance up to it. I can say, well, at the very least, don't put Gordon Ramsay's head on a bikini-clad lady playing Twister. Inherently, I imagine you shouldn't put the head of anybody on anybody else, because that's probably going to fall under the category of harassment. I did hear of a website that can find you like video clips. Like Adafruit, for instance, is making these devices that work on the Raspberry Pi, the Raspberry Pico W, which they're calling the Pi Cow, And so they've created these cowbell attachments that connect to the Pico W. And so they're putting out these. They put out a video with a Saturday Night Live sketch where they say more cowbell. I want more cowbell, more cowbell. And yeah, there's a website that can find you those kinds of clips and you could use them, but using them is going to get you struck down almost certainly. So that those are the types of things you wouldn't want to use. Yeah, and I just don't get the let's make a meme on somebody or do something funny. All of it sounds funny, and that's the kind of stuff that if I was going to do it, I would do it on Twitter or Facebook, because the risk of Twitter taking down a single post is way less than YouTube taking down your entire channel. That being said, I am also risking my channel by looking at the adult games on Steam, but so far so good. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos, because that helps me with YouTube. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.